From the very depths of my heart, I want to share with you the moment that changed everything in my life, the moment I surrendered my life to Christ. Many of us go through life searching for purpose, searching for meaning, searching for peace, and we try to find it in the wrong places. But there comes a point when we realize that nothing in this world can satisfy the soul, nothing can fill the void, nothing can heal the brokenness except Jesus Christ. I remember vividly the days before I truly gave my life to Christ. I was restless, anxious, and constantly seeking fulfillment in the temporary pleasures of this world. I tried to find happiness in achievements, in approval, in relationships, in material success. Yet no matter what I achieved, no matter what I possessed, there was always a void inside me, a gnawing emptiness that refused to be silenced. I was running on my own strength, living for myself, chasing after the things that I thought would make me complete. Then one day I encountered a truth that shook me to the core. God was calling me, and his call demanded a response. I realized that the life I was living, the choices I was making, were leading me further away from the peace I so desperately craved. I came to a place of brokenness, a place where I had no more strength to pretend, no more ability to chase the empty promises of the world. And it was there, in that moment of humility, that I understood that surrender was not weakness, but the gateway to freedom. Giving my life to Christ was not about a ritual. It was not about going through motions. It was about a heart transformation, a complete surrender of my will, my desires, and my plans to him. I remember praying and saying, Jesus, I can't do this on my own anymore. I give you my life. Take control. Direct my steps. Fill my heart with your love and your purpose. That simple yet profound prayer was the start of a new life, a life guided by his hand, a life fueled by his spirit, a life that finally had true direction and peace. When I gave my life to Christ, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. I felt chains of guilt, shame, and fear fall away. I realized that my past mistakes, my failures, my regrets no longer had power over me because I had been forgiven. The moment I surrendered, I experienced a peace that the world cannot give, a joy that surpasses understanding, and a clarity that comes only from walking in alignment with God's will. Friends, I want to tell you, giving your life to Christ is not a one-time decision that only changes your day. It's a decision that transforms your entire existence. It reorients your purpose, reshapes your desires, and rewrites your story. The life you once lived in uncertainty and struggle becomes a life filled with divine guidance, protection, and blessings. Every step you take, life without Christ often feels like running on a treadmill that goes nowhere. Many people chase success, wealth, recognition, relationships, and achievements, hoping they will fill the emptiness inside. We strive for promotions, material possessions, social acceptance, and personal goals, thinking that these will finally bring us fulfillment. Yet no matter how much we accumulate, there is a subtle but persistent sense of dissatisfaction. It is a whisper inside the heart, a feeling that something crucial is missing. This emptiness is not caused by a lack of things, friends, or achievements. It is caused by a lack of connection with the one who created us. In the midst of our accomplishments, we may feel joy temporarily, but it fades quickly, leaving us craving more, searching for meaning in all the wrong places. Many people spend their entire lives chasing dreams that do not satisfy the deepest needs of the soul. We pursue success in school, careers, and business, believing that the next achievement will bring lasting happiness. We seek comfort in relationships, hoping that love from another person will fill our void. We indulge in distractions, entertainment, and hobbies to escape the awareness that something essential is missing. But these things are temporary. They may offer moments of happiness, yet they cannot provide the eternal satisfaction the soul longs for. It is like trying to quench thirst with salt water. The more we pursue worldly things, the more our spiritual thirst grows. There is a profound sense of inner emptiness that many people experience but cannot explain. It is often disguised as restlessness, anxiety, or a feeling of unfulfillment. Even when life seems perfect on the outside, with friends, family, and material comfort, the heart can feel heavy, burdened, and lonely. This is the soul's way of signaling that it is meant for something greater. The human spirit longs for connection with God, but when we ignore that spiritual need, life feels incomplete. We try to fill our hearts with temporary pleasures, but only God can provide the lasting peace and purpose we seek. Before finding Christ, many people try to find meaning through their own efforts. We rely on our intelligence, talents, and hard work, hoping that our achievements will make life meaningful. We seek approval from others, desiring validation and recognition to feel worthy. We follow our own plans, believing that we can control our destiny and create a life of significance on our own. But no matter how capable or successful we become, there remains a gap, a void that cannot be filled by human effort alone. It is a spiritual hunger that only God can satisfy. Recognizing this emptiness is the first step toward giving your life to Christ. It requires honesty and self-reflection, a willingness to admit that life on our own terms is insufficient. Many resist this realization because it challenges their pride, independence, and reliance on themselves. It is difficult to acknowledge that despite all our accomplishments, we are not complete. But this acknowledgement opens the door to spiritual transformation. When we admit our need for God, we take the first step toward discovering true fulfillment, peace, and purpose. This emptiness is not a punishment or a flaw. It is a sign of God's design for humanity. Our souls were created for relationship with Him. When we attempt to satisfy our deepest longings through worldly means, we are like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. The desire for God remains unfulfilled. The emptiness points us toward the source of true life, joy, and fulfillment. It is God's way of guiding us back to Himself, drawing us to the understanding that He is the only one who can satisfy the longings of our hearts. Many testimonies reveal that before encountering Christ, people experienced this deep void in various ways. Some struggled with addiction, seeking temporary relief from their pain. Others pursued fame, money, or relationships, thinking that external achievements would bring them happiness. Many wrestled with anxiety, depression, or loneliness, not realizing that their spiritual hunger was the root of their suffering. But in the moment they recognized their emptiness and turned to God, a profound change began. Their lives gained clarity, purpose, and joy that no worldly possession could provide. It is important to understand that recognizing emptiness does not mean giving up on success, relationships, or personal goals. Rather, it means seeing them in their proper place and realizing that they cannot be the source of ultimate fulfillment. Life becomes richer, more meaningful, and more joyful when it is aligned with God's presence and purpose. When we allow Him into our hearts, we begin to experience the peace, love, and satisfaction that our souls have been craving. The emptiness we feel is an invitation to experience a new life, a life filled with divine purpose. It is the moment when the heart realizes that true joy is not found in material wealth, recognition, or human relationships alone, but in surrendering to God and seeking His will. When we acknowledge the insufficiency of our own efforts and the hollowness of worldly pursuits, we open ourselves to the abundant life that comes from following Christ. This recognition of emptiness also prepares the heart for surrender. When we see that our own efforts cannot fill the void, we are more willing to turn our lives over to God. The awareness of our spiritual need creates a longing for connection, for forgiveness, for guidance, and for love that only Christ can provide. It is the realization that we are incomplete without Him that leads to the moment of surrender where true transformation begins. Ultimately, recognizing the emptiness of life without Christ is the essential first step in a journey towards spiritual fulfillment. It is an awakening to the reality that worldly things are temporary and cannot satisfy the soul. It is an honest acknowledgement of our limitations and our need for divine guidance. It is the point where we realize that only by inviting God into our lives can we experience true joy, purpose, and peace that endures beyond the fleeting pleasures of this world. This moment of recognition is powerful. It is the moment when the heart begins to turn toward God, when the soul becomes aware of its Creator, and when the journey towards surrender, transformation, and eternal fulfillment begins. Life without Christ may seem full on the surface, but the emptiness beneath cannot be ignored forever. God designed our hearts to seek Him, and that search leads to the discovery of His love, grace, and purpose, a discovery that transforms our existence and fills the deepest void within us. The turning point often comes in a moment of quiet conviction rather than loud drama. It is not always marked by thunder or visible signs, but by a deep inner awareness that God is calling you personally. This call does not come as condemnation, it comes as clarity. Suddenly, the heart begins to understand that God has been present all along, patiently waiting. In this moment, excuses fall away. The pride that once said, "I can handle this myself," begins to weaken. There is an unmistakable realization that continuing life on your own terms will only lead to more confusion. There comes a defining moment in every spiritual journey when belief moves beyond knowledge and becomes surrender. It is not merely agreeing with ideas about God, nor is it performing religious routines. It is the moment when the heart finally yields control and says, "I cannot do this on my own anymore." This moment is often quiet, deeply personal, and yet powerful enough to reshape an entire life. Surrendering to Christ is not about weakness. It is about recognizing the limits of human strength and opening the door for divine power to work. For many, this moment arrives after exhaustion. You try everything: self-discipline, positive thinking, motivation, hard work, and still feel stuck. You promise yourself that you will change, do better, be better, yet keep falling into the same patterns. Pride tells you to try harder, but the soul knows that effort alone is not enough. Surrender happens when you finally stop striving to save yourself and allow Christ to take the lead. It is the realization that control is an illusion, and that true freedom begins when you release it. When you surrender to Christ, the first thing that changes is not your circumstances, but your heart. There is a deep sense of relief, as if a heavy burden has been lifted. The pressure to prove yourself, to earn worth, to fix everything alone begins to fade. In its place comes peace, not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you are no longer carrying life alone. You begin to trust that God is at work, even when you do not understand the process. This trust transforms fear into faith and anxiety into hope. Surrender also brings clarity. Before Christ, life can feel confusing, full of competing voices and directions. Everyone has advice, expectations, and opinions about who you should be and what you should pursue. When you give your life to Christ, His voice begins to stand out above the noise. Through prayer, scripture, and quiet moments of reflection, you start to sense guidance that is steady and reassuring. Decisions become less about pleasing others and more about aligning with God's will. This clarity does not come all at once, but it grows as you continue to trust and obey. Transformation follows surrender, but it is not instant perfection. Giving your life to Christ does not mean all struggles disappear overnight. Old habits, thoughts, and temptations may still arise, but they no longer define you. There is a new strength within, a strength that does not come from willpower alone, but from the presence of God's Spirit. You begin to notice gradual changes, patience replacing anger, humility softening pride, forgiveness overcoming bitterness. These changes are signs of inner renewal, evidence that God is shaping you from the inside out. One of the most profound aspects of surrender is learning to rely on grace instead of performance. Before Christ, many people believe they must earn love and approval through success or good behavior. Surrender teaches a different truth. You are loved not because of what you do, but because of who God is. This realization brings freedom from guilt and shame. You no longer define yourself by past failures or mistakes. Instead, you begin to see yourself as forgiven, redeemed, and valued. This new identity becomes the foundation for lasting change. As surrender deepens, obedience becomes a natural response rather than a forced duty. You begin to desire what aligns with God's heart. Things that once seemed important may lose their appeal, while things you once ignored, like compassion, integrity, and service, take on new meaning. This shift is not about losing joy. It is about discovering a deeper, more lasting joy rooted in purpose. Life becomes less about self-centered goals and more about reflecting God's love in everyday actions. Surrender also reshapes how you handle challenges. Problems do not disappear, but your response to them changes. Instead of panic, you learn to pray. Instead of despair, you choose hope. Instead of bitterness, you seek growth. Trusting Christ does not mean avoiding pain. It means believing that pain is not wasted. Even in difficulties, you begin to see opportunities for growth, refinement, and deeper faith. You learn that God can use every experience, good or bad, to draw you closer to Him. Relationships are transformed as well. When Christ becomes central in your life, love takes on a new depth. You become more patient, more forgiving, and more understanding, not because it is easy, but because you have experienced grace yourself. You begin to see people not as obstacles or tools, but as souls valued by God. This perspective changes how you speak, listen, and respond, creating healthier and more meaningful connections. Ultimately, surrender to Christ is not a single event, but a daily choice. Each day brings new opportunities to trust, obey, and grow. Some days are filled with confidence and joy, others with doubt and struggle. But surrender means returning again and again to the decision to let Christ lead. It is choosing faith over fear, obedience over comfort, and trust over control. Over time, this daily surrender shapes a life marked by peace, purpose, and spiritual strength. Giving your life to Christ through surrender is the beginning of true transformation. It is the moment when faith becomes personal, when belief becomes action, and when life takes on eternal significance. It is not about losing yourself. It is about becoming who you were created to be. Through surrender, you discover that the life you gain in Christ is far greater than anything you leave behind. In closing, giving my life to Christ was not the end of my struggles, but it was the end of my loneliness in them. I did not suddenly become perfect, but I became purposeful. I did not gain all the answers overnight, but I received peace that carried me through every unanswered question. What changed most was not my circumstances, but my direction. I stopped running my life on my own strength and surrendered the steering wheel to God. And that decision reshaped everything. When I look back, I realize Christ did not come to decorate my life. He came to resurrect it. He met me in my weakness, not to shame me, but to transform me. He didn't ask me to clean myself up first. He asked me to come as I was. And when I did, He began a work inside me that no human effort could ever accomplish. Chains I thought were permanent began to fall. Fear that once controlled me lost its grip. Hope, real hope, started growing where despair used to live. Giving my life to Christ meant trusting Him even when the road was unclear. It meant choosing obedience over comfort, faith over feelings, and truth over approval. It meant dying to my old ways so a new life could rise. And though that surrender was costly, it was worth everything, because what I lost was nothing compared to what I gained: identity, peace, purpose, and a future anchored in eternity. If there is one thing I know for certain, it is this: Jesus never wastes a surrendered life. When you give Him your heart, He gives you His strength. When you give Him your past, He gives you a future. When you give Him your brokenness, He gives you wholeness. The same grace that met me is available to anyone willing to say yes. This is not just my story. It can be yours too. One decision, one surrender, one moment of faith that changes everything. When you give your life to Christ, you don't lose who you are. You finally become who you were created to be.